I'm Rabbi Miriam Goldstein. I'm 60 years old, and I need to tell you something that most people in my position would never say out loud. For years, I watched families in my community pay every bill they could think of: rent, utilities, credit cards, groceries, and they paid God last. Or they didn't pay Him at all. And I said nothing. I thought it was not my place. I was wrong. Because that one habit, that one quiet mistake, is the reason so many hard-working people end up with nothing. If you are sitting there right now, wondering why you work so hard and still fall behind, I know exactly why, and I am going to tell you. But first, type the words, "I accept my wealth," in the comments right now. Just do it. We will come back to why that matters. Let me explain. You see, I did not grow up wealthy. I grew up in a home in New York where money was always tight and always discussed in whispers. My father was a good man, honest, disciplined, devoted. He paid every bill on time. He never borrowed more than he could return. But there was one principle he did not fully understand, one ordering of money that he got backwards, and it cost our family in ways I did not see clearly until I was already grown and standing in front of other families, watching them make the same quiet mistake. I became a rabbi in my early 30s, and for the first several years of counseling families, I focused on the obvious things: budgeting, debt, discipline. I told people to cut expenses, to save, to invest. All of that is true. All of that matters. But something kept nagging at me. I kept seeing families who were doing everything right on paper and still struggling. There was always a leak, always a shortfall, and I could not figure out where it was coming from. Then one afternoon, I remember this clearly, I was sitting in my study reviewing the Talmud, Tractate Tanit, and I came across something I had read 100 times before. Aser bishvil shetitasher. Tithe so that you will become wealthy. I had always understood it spiritually, a commandment, a duty. But that afternoon I sat with it differently. I asked myself, what if this is not just theology? What if this is a financial instruction? And not just an instruction about how much to give, but about when. Here's the thing. Most people who give it all, and not everyone does, they give at the end, after the rent is paid, after the car payment, after the groceries, the subscriptions, the credit card minimums. Whatever is left, if anything is left, maybe then they give. And I want to ask you something honest right now. How often is there actually something left? Almost never, because money expands to fill the space you give it. If you leave giving for last, there will never be room for it. I started digging into this. I went back through every source I could find: the Torah, the Talmud, the Zohar. And what I found was not what most financial advisors would ever tell you. In Genesis 28, Jacob is sleeping on the ground. He is running for his life from his brother Esau. He has no home, no wealth, no security. And he makes a vow. He says, "Of all that you give me, I will surely give 1/10 to you." He does not say, "If I have enough left over." He does not say, "Once I get settled." He makes the commitment first, before he has anything. And Jacob becomes one of the wealthiest figures in all of biblical history. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. I want to tell you about a woman I knew. I will call her Sarah. She came to see me about 12 years ago. She was in her mid-40s, worked as a hospital administrator, made a decent income, but every single month she was behind. She had a small amount of credit card debt that she could never seem to shrink. She had been trying to pay it off for 4 years. Every time she got close, something happened. A car repair, a medical bill. Her son needed something for school. She was exhausted and she was angry. She sat across from me and she said, "Rabbi Goldstein, I tithe. I give 10% every month. I do not understand why I am still in this position." And I asked her one question. I said, "Sarah, when do you give it?" She looked at me. She said, "At the end of the month, after everything is handled." I said, "And how often does the end of the month actually come with money still in it?" She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Almost never. So I usually give what I can. Sometimes it's 2%. Sometimes it's nothing." That was the leak. That was where her financial life was failing. Not in her discipline, not in her intentions, but in the ordering. She was paying everyone else first and leaving God for last. And God, in a sense, was getting nothing. I want to be clear about something. This is not about the amount. The Talmud does not demand that you bankrupt yourself to give. In fact, the rabbis were very specific. You should not give more than 20% so that you yourself do not become someone who needs charity. This is structured. This is wise. This is a system. The number is not the point. The order is the point. Here is what I told Sarah to do. I said, "Next month, before you pay a single bill, before you buy a single thing, take 7% of whatever you earn and set it aside for giving. Not 10 yet if that feels impossible. Start with 7. But do it first, before rent, before groceries, before anything." She looked at me like I had lost my mind. She said, "Rabbi, if I do that, I will not have enough for everything else." And I said, "You do not have enough for everything else right now. So what exactly are you protecting?" She went quiet again. That kind of quiet where something shifts. She tried it for 1 month. She called me 6 weeks later. She said, "I don't know how to explain this, but something is different." She had not missed any payments. A small opportunity came through at work, a project that brought in extra income she was not expecting. And she said the strangest thing. She said, "I feel less afraid." That fear, that constant low-level panic about money, had started to loosen, not because the numbers were dramatically different, but because she had changed the order. She had stopped telling God she would get to Him eventually and started telling Him He came first. And something responded. Now, I know some of you are watching this and thinking this is too spiritual, too vague. You want hard numbers. You want logic. So let me give you both. Here is the practical side of what happens when you give first. When you remove 7% from the top before you budget the rest, you are forced to live on 93%. And here is what most people discover. They can. They find ways. They trim things they did not even know were bleeding them, subscriptions they forgot about, habits that were costing them $40 a month without them thinking twice. When the money is already committed, creativity rises, discipline rises, and over time, not overnight, but over months, the budget gets tighter in the right places and looser in others. But there is something beyond the practical, and I will not pretend otherwise. There is something that happens spiritually when you restructure your financial life around generosity instead of around scarcity. The Zohar calls it a tzinor, a pipeline. When you open yourself to giving, you open yourself to receiving, not as a transaction, not as a formula, but as an alignment. You are saying with your money what you believe about the world, and what you believe about the world shapes what you see in it. I have watched families in my community practice this for decades, and I can tell you, the families who give first are not just more financially stable, they are calmer, they make better decisions. They do not panic when markets drop or when unexpected expenses come. Because they have built their financial identity around something larger than their account balance, and that changes everything. Now, I want to speak to you directly. If you are watching this and you are struggling, if you are working hard and still falling behind, if every time you get close to getting ahead, something knocks you back, I want you to ask yourself this one question. When do you give? Not how much, when. Because if the answer is, at the end, if there's anything left, then you already know what needs to change. Start this week, not someday, this week. When your next paycheck comes in, before you pay one bill, take 7% and give it. Give it to your house of worship. Give it to a family in your community who needs it. Give it to a cause that matters. Just give it first, and then live on what remains. See what happens over the next 30 days. You still have time. That is what I want you to hear. Whatever your situation is right now, whatever debt you are carrying, whatever fear you are managing, you still have time to change the order. You still have time to build something that lasts. The pattern can shift. It shifts when you do. And that brings me to you, right here, watching this. If something I said today landed somewhere real, I want you to do a few things. First, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because every week I come here with teachings like this one, rooted in Torah, rooted in real life, practical and honest. Second, leave me a comment. Tell me, when do you currently give? Do you give first or do you give last? Or do you not give at all? Be honest. I read every comment. Third, hit the like button. It takes 1 second and it helps this teaching reach someone who might need it more than you know. And please, think of one person in your life who is working hard and still struggling. Share this with them. You might be the one thing that changes their direction. If you have a story of your own, something you have learned about money, about faith, about the moment something shifted for you, there is a form in the description. Fill it out. These stories matter. They are how wisdom moves from one generation to the next. And before I go, type, I accept my wealth in the comments. I am serious about this. When you write it down, when you say it with your own hand, something shifts. It becomes a declaration. It becomes a commitment between you and your future. Money is not just currency. It is responsibility. And the way you order it tells the whole story of what you believe about yourself, about others, and about God. Pay Him first. Build slowly. Build wisely. That is enough.